Fire Emblem Fates Revelation has easily the highest amount of unique playable characters in Fire Emblem history at a whopping 85 characters. But what if we used none of them? What if we only had Corrin? I realized that I'm not a god at Fire Emblem, so to keep my Corrin company on this classic Lunatic run of Fates Revelation, I have enlisted the help of many of my friends to create Corrins for me to have a full Corrin-only team. By the by, if you want to see me do similar runs like this, either on streams or full videos like these, be sure to hit that like, comment, subscribe, and crit that bell! Anyway, we began by creating our own Corrin. I named her Kari because I wanted a cute mix between her JP and English name. We give her a clever boon, luck bane, and samurai talent. My intention with this Corrin is to help out in the early game with a stronger Dragonstone damage, as it uses magic damage, and then in the mid to late game, be a 11 sword user. The samurai talent is so that we can gain several skills that will prove to be useful, such as Swordfare, which will boost our damage by +5 when using a sword, Duelist Blow for 30 plus AVO during player phase, Vantage if I'm feeling confident in my enemy phase, and Astra, which will allow me to do 5 strikes at the cost of half damage, while also increasing parameter, which will be essential for increasing my chances of survival. I started with Chapter 6 of Revelation off stream with just Kari, Azura, and Jacob. And of course, we had a stipulation of using the characters that are available. However, I will not use them after said chapter they show up. I of course get a bit inconsistent with this ruling, but you'll see what happens as we go on. To recruit Corrins, there are a few ways to do this. In Fire Emblem Fates, there are certain online features you may access mainly through visiting other castles. If you're able to defeat the person you visited, you're able to either inherit skills from that person's army or recruit someone, in this case being that person's Corrin. Another option is to interact with that same Corrin for long enough that you make a what with them? Ugh, well, that fan-made self-cess Corrin S support video looking way different after learning that information. Regardless, while both would be a very viable way in obtaining Corrins for my army, I wanted my friends to give me their Corrins, and since I have very few friends and even fewer who actually own a copy of Fire Emblem Fates, I have decided to use safe hacking to make the process more streamlined and accessible. Our first Corrin, Kira, is from StarlitScarf. Historians and scholars say we were close friends. Kira is a Cavalier class with a Strength boon and Luck bane. I also allowed all Corrins to have any skill of their choosing, with the only exceptions being skills that just wouldn't work, like Inspiring Song and DLC/Amiibo skills, as I believed they were too powerful. We decided to pick the Aegis skill, as I believed it was funny given the fact that he is a Xenoblade and Persona fan. The next would be Bethel from GalaxyStealth, who is a friend I've made playing fighting games. Bethel was chosen to be an archer with a Luck boon and Speed bane, something that proves to be a sign of things to come for a long while. Stealth also chose the swap skill, which allows her and an adjacent unit to swap spaces, something that could be helpful in certain scenarios, though as an archer it becomes challenging as Bethel won't be able to counterattack in one range. The third is from Dracoblade. For this Corrin, Dracoblade named her Nakano, as a spear fighter with a Strength boon and Luck bane. As for the skill, he went with Lancefare, which will definitely increase the immediate damage for Nakano. The last Corrin for this chapter will be from StarlitScarf once again, of course while we were eating Burger King. Listen man, a lot of my friends submitting these Corrins don't play a lot of FE, if at all, which means I'm probably not getting a healer. Can you please make one for me?
It depends. Only if she has pink hair and pronouns.
Deal. And so we have made the savior of this run, Coco our goat. Coco is a troubadour with a clever Luck, Boon Bane, and Aptitude, a skill that increases Coco's growth rate by an additional 10%. That's actually kind of silly. At last, it is time to begin Chapter 7. After Azura tells Kari and Jacob to jump off a cliff and being in, I deployed Kari, Coco, Bethel, and Nakano, as I felt I needed to level up the last two as fast as possible to be able to deal more damage and help out later. As I was playing, it became very clear to me that these Corrins will not be able to gain support points with each other. Thus, we are stuck at base level pair-up bonuses, so choosing who we pair up with is going to be essential. On the bright side, however, even base level pair-ups still give a noticeable stat boost, and we have plenty of ways to stack stats, such as tonics and meals. It should also be noted that all of our Corrins' personal skills, Supportive, which gives every paired up Corrin plus 10 hit and an additional plus 2 damage, and we take 2 less damage, will not work which, damn. My first long-term goal at the moment was to level up Kari's sword rank. This is so that I can use the 11th sword, which is a C rank weapon. While I won't get the 11th sword for quite a while, I foresaw myself using the Dragonstone very often due to it being essentially my Jaden for this run. However, I realized this would be really difficult for this chapter due to all of my units being pretty weak and frail. And not having a dancer hurt more than I thought, so I stuck with the Dragonstone for the majority of this chapter. As we progressed, I accidentally put Nakano in a position where in enemy phase, she would get killed. So after using 2nd grade level math, I decided that Coco, our goat, will take a hit for Nakano, and by 2 HP, she survives, giving us a chance to kill that last archer in the room. A bit afterward, we received an Armor Slayer, which I'm sure was intended for the Armor Knight up ahead, but Kari didn't have enough sword rank to use it, so after crying a bit inside, I just used my Dragonstone to tank and kill with the Yato. And yeah, that chapter was pretty simple. We got Gunter as an additional guy on the bench to cheer us on, and yeah, we got through first try. In chapter 8, we decided to convince more people who we will not be using whatsoever to join us to save and defeat. Starting at Fort Jinya, one of the many reused maps Revelations used from the other 2 routes. In this case though, the map is reversed. Here, I decided to deploy a new Corrin made by Gino, a friend I made fairly recently, which is crazy because we lived practically next to each other since elementary school. This Corrin's name is Elfin, a diviner with a clever luck boonbane with a personal skill of seal defense, which becomes extremely helpful, especially early on where -6 defense can almost be over half of an enemy's entire defense stat, along with making killing bosses go easier. I used clever uses of transfer and pair up to heal Kari every turn as she was holding a 1-tile choke point for the majority of the map, along with using Nakano to help defeat most of the archers in enemy phase. After grabbing a Killer Lance and Wyrm Slayer through the chest, I easily defeat Yukimura with Kari's Yato, edging us just a bit closer to the sword rank required to use the 11th sword. After the map ends, we managed to convince Sakura, Tsubaki, Hana, and Kaze to join the ranks of the most important part of this army, sitting on the bench. In chapter 9, we hit the hardest chapter yet, commonly known as Fuga's Wild Ride. This is considered one of the most infamous maps in Fates' history, while also being one of my favorites. However, since this map comes in super early compared to Conquest, the enemy density is significantly smaller, allowing us to be able to take our time and kinda just get through this map. I deploy every Corrin I had up to that point, including 2 extra Corrins. The first is Zaro, totally not from One Piece, who is a samurai with a strength speed boonbane, fittingly from Just A Weeb. Also, goddamn, another speed bane, this sucks. And lastly, for this chapter is from my new Oomphy, Jader. This Corrin's name is Alcohol, with a strength luck boonbane, with a personal skill of Darting Blow, and is, ironically, a Pegasus Night Flyer. Don't drink while flying, kids. It ain't safe. In this chapter, Rinka shows up, which, while she normally would be sitting on the bench, due to the nature of this map, I thought it was wise to use Rinka as a paraplot, as a +2 defense and +4 strength would be very helpful in getting enough damage to defeat enemies and tanking. Alcohol being a flyer was extremely crucial in taking both my units to where they needed to be and for escaping purposes. Kara was also very solid due to being a cav, having good support bonuses, 2 range access, and covering 2/3 of the weapon triangle, making hit rates become more favorable and just giving me more options. 89%. No! Yeah. After quite a lot of attempts, I finally get through and reach Fuga, who would have been easily one of the scariest early game bosses in FE Fates due to having Vantage, Duelist Blow, and Seal Strength. But this is easily mitigated by the fact that he only has 1 range, allowing all of my Javelin users, Bethel and Elfin, to easily clap him, with Bethel and a dual strike Kari finishing the job, allowing us to seize and clear Chapter 9 in 45 turns. In Chapter 10, we reach Izumo and find out the ruler Izana was actually Zola, which is a consistent plot point in every Fates route, but instead of being inside a castle, we're in a town, where Zola uses a glitter bomb filled with snow to completely cover the town, keeping us away from attacking him, but due to lack of foresight, Zola also covers his army in snow, making it fairly easy to just pick everyone off one by one in what is essentially Fog of War if it was less annoying. This chapter has quite a few stat boosters, so I go ahead and grab every single one of them and reach Zola. The main issues here are the mages with Mjolnir, which can easily ruin any attempt at this chapter if unlucky. But with perseverance, and with totally how big brain I am, I managed to defeat Zola with the help of Elfin Seal Defense, ending the chapter with an impressive 53 turn count. Since we saved Talk to Me along with his retainers who happened to be there, and the fact that Izana just dies for pondering his orb too hard, Talk to Me decides that was enough for him to join Kari in her quest to have everyone sit on the bench before asking all of them to jump off a cliff. I began Moses Paralog to gain some much needed EXP, including for a new Corrin submitted by Hideout. This Corrin's name is Takeo, an Oni Savage with a defense and speed Boonbane. It was intended for Takeo to have the strongest defense growth rate possible, and at the very least to be a good pair-up bot. Takeo also has Heartseeker, which will increase our chance of hitting, as after engage, I no longer trust the RN of hit rates. But yeah, we beat this Paralog fairly easily, take Mozu into our wing to not only sit in the bench, but provide good veggies for our bench warmers. In chapter 11, we get attacked by a bunch of ninjas, and I'm out of Corrins. After making some calls, we managed to get 2 extra Corrins. The first is Chip, totally not from Guilty Gear, once again from Just A Weeb. Chip has a speed, defense, Boonbane, and is fittingly the ninja class. The interesting part about Chip is that he has the life and death skill. This skill gives Chip plus 10 attack, but in return any damage he receives is plus 10, making his starting defense stat effectively -2. Yeah, it's gonna be rough. The next is Eladria, an armor knight with a standard strength luck Boonbane from CarefulThought with the poison strike skill, which is a bit strange for an armor knight, but honestly I'll take it. So we barely were able to grab enough Corrins to get through this chapter, where we get Saizo, who will be on the bench, Reina, who will also be on the bench, and Orochi, who will be sacrificed for our cause. Chapter 11 is one of those chapters where you're kind of in the middle and have to deal with enemies on all sides. Normally, I'd imagine I'd recruit Reina to solo the other promoted enemies, but since I chose to not really use the units I receive other than being a glorified obstruct staff or pair-up bot this chapter, the Master Ninjas were really scary to deal with, as they could one-round quite a few of our Corrins, especially Chip, who has -2 defense. Eladria thankfully was useful enough to be a great pair-up bot for Kari to take hits, as Eladria's defense stat, while decent, wouldn't have been enough to deal with the tougher enemies. So with riveting turtling strats, we defeat Kotaro. Chapter 12 starts with Flora, stopping our leisurely boat ride by freezing the ocean. As my entire army is our former boss, we must put a stop to this, immediately! I began by calling the help of Twitch chat to make another Corrin, as I realized I had 2 missing slots. The Sinful Ant, or as I like to call him, the Fire Emblem Fates Boogeyman. As legend says, if you stream Fates long enough, he will show up without fail. Ant, due to the recent popularity of engaged character Rosado, created a femboy Corrin named Camille, a strength res Boonbane outlaw with the Deathblow skill, making him the crit god of this run. A bit before the stream, I also asked GalaxyStealth to create another Corrin in voice chat, giving me Respin, a Wyvern Knight with a defense res Boonbane with the even-handed skill, creating an odd situation, no pun intended, where while he does do decent one-hit damage, his speed is so low, making him best used as a flyer pair-up and occasional physical tank. So he is basically a flying armor knight, and possible proof that you cannot just make an armor knight good by simply giving them more move, unless your name is Louis with Sigurd. Chapter 12 has quite a few enemies, so I paired everyone up in the 2 most left boats in order to not split up my army entirely in 4 different sections. Something that I don't believe I could handle given how frail most of my Corrins are. This may be the most difficult chapter to beat in Revelation's early game, given the enemy berserkers being able to one-round any one of our Corrins, along with my belief that many of Revelation's chapters from here on out are balanced around the pre-promoted units you gained beforehand, such as Reina, who is chilling on the bench, watching me and my Corrins scream in terror of this berserker that we have to deal with in 3 turns. Thankfully, with Elfin Seal Defense, with Alcohol and Respin's parrot movement, I'm able to weaken and take the berserker out, and slowly begin the long trudge to gain as much EXPs for our Corrins. I intended to make Coco into a maid to give her the ability to use the Flame Shuriken. However, after using her for a bit, I realized that maybe it wasn't worth making my only healer footlocked. so I only focused on giving her the Live to Serve skill, allowing Coco to not rely as much on vulneraries to keep her useful for body blocking. Camille starts off relatively strong as he gets roughly 20% crit rates. However, due to me feeling a bit tired and not reading skills properly, I did not notice that Flora had the Icy Blood skill, which deals any range damage I deal at her received back to me at half damage. This causes Camille to die on turn 78. After chat got angry at me for clearly reading the skill, yet still attacking with a ranged attacker, I continued, and after 2 hours, making damn sure I don't repeat the same mistake, defeated Flora using Chip, ending this chapter in 93 turns. After watching the Pokemon Presents and totally not crying inside that we didn't get a new Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, I start chapter 13, which puts us in Sarkensia. I wanted this to be an opportunity to have a Zera dance for my benched units to keep them entertained. Unfortunately, this won't be the case, as the city is in ruins by the invisible soldiers, giving us potentially what was used as the inspiration for the Battle of Eagle and Lion and Chapter 4 of Engage's Xenologue DLC. However, most likely due to the limitations of Fire Emblem Fates' engine, both Hoshido and Nor are red enemies, which honestly doesn't change much other than them not attacking each other. Rev 13 gives us access to obstacles to drop in place, allowing us to plug choke points. This gives us a great opportunity for me to train Eladri up significantly, as I am focusing on giving her Wary Fighter, an essential skill to keep her relevant as I cannot double the enemy, but neither can they. This is also when I recruit another Corrin from an old friend Momo, who named her Nephinix, an apothecary with rally speed. This is an incredible skill to have right now, as a surprising amount of my Corrins' speed stats are low, allowing most enemies to double us. After carefully plugging choke points and slowly progress, I start to seriously think about Revelations' map design philosophy, as I genuinely believe many of their concepts and map gimmicks on paper sound incredible and can prove to be very fun. But in execution, with when these chapters happens and how the maps operate and want you to play, a lot of maps just tend to take a ridiculous amount of turns. Granted, part of the reason why these maps have taken me so long is because of the fact that I am maximizing EXP gain for my Corrins, as I suspect you will receive plenty of units who will be able to better handle these chapters. But I still began to think about ways Rev could have used these gimmicks, such as maybe giving us the snow shoveling map, but they give us a significantly higher deployment count. Or have the obstacle drops be in an escape chapter, maybe allowing enemies to break them or pick them up themselves, obstructing our progress. Things like these keep the game pacing much faster while keeping gimmicks like these feel fresh and new. And I do believe intelligent systems have learned from most of these lessons of Revelation and Engage, where Fog of War slows down units, like the snow map, but still making the maps feel active, and we have a lot of ways to deal with it. And the Obstruct Staff, which I believe is the successor to the Obstacle Drop gimmick, along with also being the successor to the Light Rune and Shine Barrier from the older games. Huh? Oh, I beat Rev 13? Cool. How many turns did that take? 139 turns?! Goddamn, that took more turns than my Xenologue 3 Maddening run. We begin by creating an Axe Fighter Corrin named Sakuya from Hotel Pneumario, with a Luck Magic Boonbane and a personal skill of Rend Heaven, a proc skill, essentially making her one step away from becoming an online hacked My Castle arena monster. Chapter 14 begins as a reused map from Conquest Chapter 10, and changes the map objective to a route map instead of a defend map, something that makes me quite frankly still kinda angry. I start by playing it how I normally would for Conquest Chapter 10, though because of the fact that it is a route map, and the fact that Takumi isn't here to drain the water, we simply take our time here. I also promote Kari into a Nor Noble for the eventual Draconic Hex, a skill that essentially makes her into a ninja, and Norian Trust, a skill that I feel could be very fun and useful for the late game. We then recruit Charlotte, defeat Silas, kill everyone else, and then awkwardly save Benny for last to recruit in order to clear the chapter in a blazing fast 78 turns. We then immediately start chapter 15, where at the suggestion of Ryoma from Rev 13, we climb a mountain to meet the Rainbow Sage, who is also in the records hall doing the Alba test for some reason. We start off by recruiting Nyx, who is awful, especially at this stage of the game. However, it matters not, as after this, she will simply stay on the bench. I also promote Eladri into a general, Since this is a reused map from each route, I do what I have always done in each of those routes. Take my time, maximize EXP gains, and grab all the chests and weapon drops. Coco also gets every single stat in a single level up. That was great. And we also grabbed Shura, who we unfortunately can't choose between him or Boots in this route. Unfortunate. And we ended off with Alcohol getting some much needed EXP by killing the boss, clearing the chapter in 53 turns. Turns out an old NPC who gave us directions early on was actually the Rainbow Sage the whole time, and explained the Yato is the Seal of Flames, the Fire Emblem. And then proceeds to die after upgrading our Yato into the Alpha Yato. A solid personal weapon upgrade for its defense buffs just by simply having it in your inventory, making it never a bad thing to keep on Kari. In chapter 16 through 17, Yago and Hans prepare their final attack on our army of Corrins, while we wait in the lava fields, a place where walls of fire hinder our and the enemy's progression. Ryoma, Scarlet, Hinoka, and her retainers join in on the fun. Before I send them to our now famous bench, I begin to focus on the top left corner where Ryoma's team is, quickly defeating the enemies using Kari's new forged Levin sword, Ziggy. The walls of this chapter change every other turn. This allows certain choke points to close and open up. This can be mitigated by the use of Dragon Veins. Unfortunately, Kari is the only unit I can use Dragon Veins on, outside of Ryoma and Hinoka, who I only choose to use as pair up and transfer bots. After defeating the enemies in the top left corner, I begin to sit and wait over 26 turns to defeat any oncoming reinforcements. A line that I will most definitely be saying more often as the run continues. It is after that, and me slowly progressing, that I begin to finally start promoting my other Corrins, as many have reached or are close to level 20. I start with promoting Respin into a Wyvern Lord, mostly with rally defense in mind, as I have come to the conclusion that Respin has too low of a speed stat to be actually useful in combat. With that, we finally defeat Hans, getting a lucky Dragon Fang critical hit, sealing the chapter in 59 turns. Chapter 17 begins immediately after 16, and we will not be able to save for this chapter. Something that future entries like Engage have improved upon, like Jesus Christ. This chapter features Yago's final assault with a mage cannon that I am very not happy about. I begin in the prep screen by immediately promoting Elfin into an Omnioji, giving us a second staff user and giving us the ability to get Rally magically. I also promote Kira into a Great Knight. I intended to only have Kira grab Luna, then switch to Paladin, but due to the inflated stats of enemies later on, and my very limited resources at this point in time, I felt the extra bulk was necessary to keep for the rest of the run. After 2 turns, Xander, Leo, and all the retainers, including Niles, who is kind of useless. Like, he can capture, but after this chapter, you can't capture enemies. Why? To start, we wait patiently for the initial wave of enemies to come approach me, clearing them off mostly with Kira paired up with Eladria doubling, thanks to Nephinix's rally speed. Camille also pulls his weight as his criticals become more and more consistent to pull off to be able to defeat even armor knights. Sakuya has also learned the gamble skill, a skill that in return of -10 hit gives me +10 crit. While -10 hit sucks, especially for an axe user, this can be mitigated by simply having another Corrin next to Sakuya, giving us +10 hit. After dealing with the initial waves, we wait for all the enemy reinforcements to show up and we defeat all of those. We then kill the magic cannon user using Kari's Alpha Yato, as well as reclassing Coco into a strategist to regain her high move and slowly progress through to reach Yago, chipping him with Kari and killing him off with Chip. It was fairly great damage, especially to mages, again, due to his life and death skill. The chapter closes with Xander and Ryoma shaking hands, realizing that they stand on common ground and goals, which, given the fact that they're both now on the bench, is more literal than you'd think. That is all for this part of the Corrin-Only Team Revelations Lunatic run. The next part will be out when I finish it, and we'll be covering the section of the game. If you want to know immediately when it comes out, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Anyway, I'll see you guys sometime soon. Bye, Pia!